All right. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the March installment of Accelerant Research Virtual Insights Conference. For those of you just joining for the first time, thank you very much. Welcome. For those who have been here for some of our previous conferences, thanks for coming back. We have had the pleasure to be holding these virtual conferences now for, gosh, a year. Pandemic hit us and shutdowns began about a year ago, and collectively as a team here at Accelerant Research, we kind of scratched our heads and made note of the fact that all of the in-person conferences were going away. So we decided to do something about that and put on our own series of conferences. At the time, back in March, April of last year, we thought it was just going to be one event, but it went really well, very well received. I think just researchers in general were happy to have an opportunity to get together, to talk shop. Couldn't do so in person, so this was the next best thing. I always give the caveat of Accelerant is a research company. We're not an event planning company. We're not a conference organization company. So, our polish may not be, what you see with some other virtual conferences. Not apologizing for that. We're just a bunch of research nerds getting together and talking about the craft. So that's what we're going to do today. Let's see, 1 year ago, that's right. So, a few ground rules that we go through. If you've been in on any of these virtual conferences, you've heard these before, you'll hear them throughout the day, but just like to flash them at the beginning of each presentation, just to remind everyone. I don't think I mentioned the rebrand. So last year, we were the quarantined Virtual Insights Conference. Here we are, we're a year later, things are looking much better. So, we wanted to ditch the negative attitude, bring a little optimism to the table. So we changed to just the straight up Accelerant Research Virtual Insights Conference. Hopefully not too long, we'll actually be able to do these things, by choice, virtually or in person, whenever we want to, right? But we got a few ground rules that we like to sort of give you guys at the outset. Number one is we're at the mercy of the tech. So we've still got, dispersed presenters, dispersed attendees. A lot of our presenters, in fact, most, if not all, are still working from home, still subject to whatever bandwidth, connectivity, pets, kids, you name it, that you can think of. So, just be patient, be respectful. We're all in this together. So let's just, learn from one another and go along those lines. I think a couple of my favorites that we've had over the year, we've had a presentation that got interrupted by an appliance delivery. We've had a couple of presentations that got stopped for a reboot or a unexpected software install right in the middle. We roll with the punches. We'll just keep on keeping on. If for whatever reason our host feed goes out, if one of our presenters go out, we will be archiving and recording everything, and we'll catch you on the flip side, as it were. This also being a virtual event, and we can't get together and see each other at the bar or at the cocktail line. We try to encourage networking as much as possible. Try to get out there, talk to one another. If you're in the Zoom meeting right now, so we've got a few different touch points that these webinars are happening on. We've got Zoom, which is kind of the hub that we're broadcasting. So we've got a lot of folks who are attending here. You have access to a chat function. There's a Q&A function that you can definitely feel free to chatter with one another, pose questions to our speakers, whatever you like. We've got other folks that are accessing via LinkedIn, some via YouTube, some via Twitter, that may not have access to the Zoom chatter necessarily, but there is chat available in each of those platforms. And we have Accelerant host folks who are going to be monitoring. You pose questions there, you have comments. We'll definitely catch those and bring them into the conversation. Okay, so we've got a really great lineup for today. We're starting with our 11 o'clock talk in just a few moments, but just a quick rundown of the other speakers that we have today. So we've got, starting at noon, we've got Heidi Carrion and Jillian Wells. They're going to be talking about ethnography, the power and the pivot. We've got the Chase Design and Simpactful teams who are going to be speaking on the physical store, new realities, new opportunities. And we're going to close the day with a couple of really interesting customer experience related talks. Number one is going to be at 2 p.m. from Mark Michelson, and this is going to be how customer experience research is changing the game for marketing research, followed by our cleanup hitter for the day is going to be John Whitaker, and he's going to be talking about extracting the power of customer experience management systems. So some really, really great topics, a lot of insights to get into. Our first presenter of the day at 11 o'clock a.m. was scheduled to be Josh DeFreets from Walgreens, talking about design research for the COVID-19 vaccine rollout. But unforeseen circumstances, or perhaps foreseen circumstances, I mean, here we are in the midst of COVID vaccine rollout. Josh is going to be unable to give his talk today. If any of you are in the midst of trying to get your own vaccine, you know that it is, dynamic doesn't even begin to describe what's going on out there. We're refreshing apps and appointment calendars, throughout the day, trying to get ourselves scheduled and in. It's equally crazy right now for someone who is on the front line, part of the design and administration team, as Josh is for Walgreens. So ran into a snafu with regard to being able to get his presentation ready for this morning and out the door and approved by corporate communications. That's obviously a big piece. So Josh is unable to do it for today, but luckily we don't lose Josh altogether. He is going to be able to join us for next month's conference, which is going to be April 29th. Go ahead and save the date, mark your calendars. Josh is going to be joined by, at present, Mandy Drew from Capital One, Molly Malsum from Charles Schwab, and Marcus Cunha from University of Georgia MMR program. Marcus is actually going to be joined by some of his students as well. Looking forward to that presentation and everyone's. We've got one or two more that are to be announced, so stand by for those. So Josh isn't able to present at 11 a.m., but the show must go on. This is what we've been up against during COVID, right? Just craziness. What is the buzzword of COVID-19 and pandemic and everything that we've been dealing with for the past year? Pivot. Everybody say it with me. This is what we're up against. So, why should a conference be any different, right? So and we're researchers, guys. So, we're used to this type of thing. By the way, the word pivot, used to be kind of an obscure member of the buzzword bingo card. Now I think it's, anything that you sit on, it's there. It's almost like that free star space in the middle of the bingo card. It just, everybody's talking about pivot. Okay, so Josh is unable to present today. I am going to attempt to step in and take his place. We got similar haircuts, so you're not missing out on too much. We thought about, just let it slide, not even mention the fact that Josh isn't presenting, that I'm going to take his place. Do like Terrence Howard in the first Iron Man. We show up for Iron Man 2, and it's as if nothing happened, right? Except in that case, I think I'd be the Don Cheadle of this analogy, and no way, I can't feel his shoes. So, I think maybe better analogy is Jinxie Cat, the second substitute Jinxie Cat in Meet the Parents. That's what you get. So congratulations, guys. No, but I'm going to give you a 2 for the price of 1 presentation. So I can't possibly compete with the subject matter that Josh had. So I'm going to give you two presentations. Number one, speaking of what we're dealing with substitute presentation, research shit happens. Going to talk about, all those external crazy factors that happen for us research peeps. The stuff they don't teach you in research school, right? Second half of my presentation is going to be basically sharing results from a recent survey that the Accelerant team, recent as in like this week, the Accelerant team conducted on the subject of stimulus. What are people doing with it? What does it mean to them? Who's received, who hasn't received, who's expecting to receive. So some interesting, hot off the presses results for that. So, appreciate you guys being flexible, and that's what we're going to do. So we are going to pivot into my presentation. So like I said, two parts. First part is going to be the research shit happens. And like I said, I won't say that this is a hastily thrown together presentation, but it is, not going to be as 100% polished as maybe some of our other presenters today, but that's okay. I think it's some good subject matter. As insights and research professionals, this is the stuff that we deal with on a daily basis, right? We design our research studies to be, these beautiful works of art, and then, here come the factors that are going to potentially throw us off our game. So, what do? Do we quit? Do we call timeout? No, we keep on going. It's not over. We keep on keeping on. So I'm gonna check my notes throughout this, and forgive me. Like I said, this isn't going to be TED Talk level of polish, but just some interesting things from my own experience, from folks that I've dealt with over my career, experiences here at Accelerant, and the corporate side. Going to try to bounce around, give some examples that are with regard to qualitative research, quantitative research, corporate side, supplier side, academia, junior level, senior level factors, trying to have a little something for everyone. Definitely, you guys, you're the warriors out there doing this every day as well. So in the chatter, feel free to share your own stories, to share, any anecdotes that you have. We've all got the scars to prove it, having done this and chosen this pathway as a career. So, definitely feel free to talk about it, right? Like I said, I'm going to go through some examples, and definitely you guys feel free to do the same. So I'm going to break this up into a few different topics or subjects, right? So number one, participant shit happens. You design your study. You've got it all figured out. You have your target audience set, ready to go, ready to roll. And then, maybe you start to field your research and things happen. I think a great example of this is you think about target audience for media buys, for advertising, or even maybe from behavioral database internally at a company. Those targets don't always translate to research targets necessarily, right? You sometimes, especially, if you are doing ad testing, product development research, if you are keeping a focus as narrow potentially as, what the media team is doing from a creative standpoint or from a media buy standpoint, maybe missing out on a very large proportion of the potential target audience for your research. So, as researchers, we have to think about these things, right? When a request is coming through and we are being asked to start rolling on some research, you need to take with a grain of salt, that request. Maybe it is marketing internally that has a request. Maybe the point of that request is to really hone in on a very specific audience. But you as the researcher have to be kind of the voice of reason, and sometimes even push back on if that audience is appropriate or if it should be expanded upon. These are the things that we have to kind of talk through, talk about. Um, One of my favorite subjects when it comes to participants is, especially with qualitative research, is the sort of expectation versus reality, right? When you're sitting down designing a research study and even designing the audience for a research study, um, that audience in your head as the research designer may look very different than the folks who are maybe sitting around the table in a focus group facility, right? Um, this is especially true when it comes to like customer segmentation, right? Uh, Algorithms in customer segmentation. Maybe you've done a very large scale quant segmentation. You develop this really cool algorithm to take individuals based on survey responses or demographics and behavioral characteristics, and put them into their respective customer segment buckets, right? And you've got really cool personas and profiles that um, are based on this large scale, bit of segmentation research. Um, when it comes to qualitative research, if you're not careful, if all you do is apply that segmentation algorithm or typing tool to recruiting for qualitative research, for example, you can be sorely disappointed, and so can the folks that are in the room talking to you, or that are in the observation room, rather, stakeholders internally who are receiving this research. Um, and a fun exercise that I always recommend you go through when you've done a segmentation study, when you've produced this type of information, is actually to go into your data file, into your huge segmentation data file, and start to look line by line at your individuals. Those personalities that are developed in aggregate when you're looking at these entire buckets or segments. They're distinct in many cases. When you look at it on an individual level, you are often, there's a lot of overlap, a lot of bleeding. You think about, I'll take like a soda segmentation, for example. An individual who purchases, soda once a week versus twice a week, it may look almost identical from a personality and brand affinity standpoint, but that may be kind of a cutoff point that sends them into one segment bucket versus another. So when you're doing qualitative research, I always recommend, especially if there is a segmentation algorithm or typing tool involved, it's always a good idea to accompany that with segment profiles. So not only what makes an individual a member of a given segment, but also what that segment is supposed to look like. So when you're recruiting for this qualitative research, you can actually take these things into consideration, right? You can recruit for personality in addition to segment membership. Yeah, I got a few more things with regard to participants, but let's get into the next section. And that's going to be tech shit happens. When I started my research career, I did almost all of my research, I'm going to date myself a little bit, but was mall intercept driven. This was in-person research. Remember the people at the mall with the clipboards. That was how we did the vast majority of quantitative research. Maybe some Katie research as well over the phone, but this internet thing, at the time wasn't even a thing. Fast forward to now, and especially quantitative, the vast majority of research that is done online. So tech is, and what does that give us, right? It gives us, far greater, speed to market, speed to results, much less expensive, less of a logistical undertaking. But we are incredibly reliant on that technology, and when it craps out, we got problems. So what do you do when the tech shit happens? How do you respond? What do you do as researchers? Um, some qualitative examples. I'll give you a couple of them because those are always fun. Um, this past year, uh, all of the in-person research for qualitative pivoted over to online. And Zoom became, a best friend of lots of us. I mean, we're doing this webinar right now hosted via Zoom. We've done a ton of focus groups, of in-depth interviews, of qualitative research via Zoom. And there was a great anecdote that we had was, we had a set of focus groups that were launching. I guess this would have been, I don't know, maybe spring of last year. So this was after shutdown, but it happened to be, the day that we were launching a series of focus groups was the same day that just about every school in America was getting back to some type of school, right? So it was almost exclusively virtual at the time. And guess what they were using to access? Zoom. So, this was the morning that everybody was, and, you still had at the time so many folks in corporate America who were also using Zoom for meetings. So, 9 a.m. on that Monday, we're ready to roll with a focus group. And so is everyone, just absolutely bombarding the Zoom platform. And they went down for, I think it was a couple of hours. They responded quickly. They got it back up and running, but we had a group that was supposed to be happening at the time. We had to pivot. We had to jump over to another platform. It's not perfect. It's not as it was designed, but we were able to make it work. I've been in, in-person focus groups where, fuse has gone out in the observation room behind the glass. Our audio feed is cut. We have no, laptops or power. What do you do? In that case, we'll actually, get the group of observers and in many cases bring them into the focus group interview room. Stick them in, against the wall in chairs. Apologize to the participants. Tell them to ignore the folks that are staring and breathing down their throat. But the show must go on, right? So you adjust, you pivot, you figure out what can be done. I always recommend, whenever possible, with just about any research study, always thinking about contingencies, thinking about what ifs. Hopefully you never have to use them, but if we become too reliant and comfortable, that's when we can really cause trouble for ourselves, or get ourselves into trouble when something is expected to work and doesn't, right? So tech is a bit of a double-edged sword. You've got the helpful side, which, I mean, I can't imagine what this pandemic would have been like 10 years ago. Now everyone has connectivity. Everybody is able to get together to the extent possible, but thank goodness for the tech that has sort of kept us going, right? But there is a darker side to technology as well. And if we're not careful as researchers, it can really bite us. So quant research and even qual, we've been seeing this happening to a certain extent. The rise of survey bots, the rise of professional survey takers. AI is really magical and helping us from a research execution and analysis standpoint, and even quality control. Like, on the one hand, we can use AI to help weed out some of these bad players, right? The cheaters and the folks that are trying to manipulate their way into research studies. But they're savvy, and they are always looking for the next in. So I challenge all researchers, supplier side where I sit, this is a huge piece of what we do, is just trying to stay one step ahead of the cheaters and the bots. And this comes down to just being obsessive about quality control, about, checking data, checking responses, check, trying to make sure that, we can keep out, those who are trying to take part in research, for malicious reasons. If you're looking to lose any sleep tonight, because, not enough anxiety in the world today, go to, there's a Reddit thread, I believe it's called Beer Money. It has a few offshoots that start to talk about, basically ways to, for the most part, it is innocent, and it's just, folks sharing ways to, make a couple of extra bucks. And in some cases that is, taking part in survey research and qualitative research. But there are definitely some dark pathways that you can get down with, tips and tricks on how to cheat your way into research studies, to make yourself appear qualified, to present yourself as someone that you are not. And then, ways to either, develop your own bot code, ways to go out and purchase bots. Yeah, it's scary. It's, I don't mean to be too doomsday about it, but it's something that we as researchers, we must acknowledge, we must, pay attention to, because it's there. And if we're completely ignoring, then, we're gathering garbage data, right? Even starting to see it creep into the world of qualitative research as well, bots, that is. There are a lot of, chat bots and language processing and AI tools in existence to help us in qualitative research, actually conduct interviews more efficiently, quicker. Chatbots are in play for, lots of companies, right? This helps to, take care of customer service on a faster basis. But there's the flip side of that, and, participants or fake participants can be creating these types of bots as well. Real world example that I like to give is, so I'm a bit of a sneakerhead. I have a problem when it comes to sneakers. I'm seeking help. I'm putting it out there on the table. But Nike, has this enabling app that, I can't get enough of it. It's called Sneakers app, where they basically release, rare versions of their shoes. And suckers like me will get on there and, frantically try to grab the next shoe. So 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning, they drop a new shoe. They let you know beforehand that it's coming, and there's all kinds of excitement. And so right at 10 a.m., you have your phone, you have to very quickly hit purchase, type in your information, and you get put in line to maybe grab, these new cool shoes. So 2 examples being shown here of times when I did not get the shoes, and timestamps on both of these. So the kind of Hunger Games competition for getting these rare shoes starts at 10 o'clock in the morning. By 10:08 and 10:07 respectively, I am told that I didn't get them. Literally, I immediately at 10 a.m. start typing in my information to choose them, and it doesn't happen. Why? Bots. There are shopping bots out there that in milliseconds, can get in line ahead of me to get these shoes. And, you can go online and look at, seconds after Nike releases these brand new shoes, they are available on reseller sites for sometimes double and triple the price. So, definitely incentive involved. Obviously the research analogy there is that, if you can cheat your way into lots and lots of research, you can, make it pretty lucrative for yourself. And if no one is paying attention, i.e. the researchers, folks are just getting away with it. And clients and end users on the opposite end are, receiving garbage data. All right, so speaking of end users, stakeholders, stakeholder shit happens. So, we all as researchers serve someone, right? We are doing this research on behalf of somebody, right? If you're on the corporate side, it's on behalf of or helping to aid decision making for executives, for board members, for lines of business, steering committees, you name it, right? If you're on the supplier side, you're serving clients or clients, depending on where you sit in the food chain. Think about like a sample provider, for example. You could be 7, 8, in some cases, steps removed from the person that's actually receiving, the research. And that, creates issue in and of itself. Imagine the communication trickle that has to happen in order for everyone to get the right information. Even academia, we're, like I said, we're all serving someone, whether it's publications, review boards, you name it, right? And we're all subject to politics. So, all the things and factors that can be, messing with our individual research studies, the stakeholders that we're working with are subject to their own sets of circumstances and factors and, environmental and political issues that can mess up what they're doing and thereby mess up what we're doing. To the extent possible, it's our job as insight professionals, researchers, to try to understand what those around us are up against and anticipate, be ready for, respond to as best we can, right? And I think, in this talk, I kind of go back and forth between, issues come up and you just sort of roll with the punches and adjust, all the way to, it's kind of a continuum, right? There's, the doomsday on the other end. That we bounce around among all. All right, where are we on time? I'm going to speed through these last few so we can get to some survey results. Deadline shit happens. Agile research is very much a thing right now. And if executed properly, it's very high quality, not just, cheap and dirty, get in, get out type of research. And it relies heavily on parallel pathing, right? So, I want to, as quickly as possible, be able to hit the ground running with, this, I don't know, concept test, for example. That is going to rely on whoever is supplying that stimulus to me to be able to drop into this quick research so I can get quick results to produce. And, just like we talked about with stakeholders, if they get derailed for whatever reason, that's going to impact what I'm working on. And, we have to adjust. We have to figure out ways to make sure that we're, taking into consideration, make sure that we're, trying to work around and adjust to anything that's happening, right? All right, budget shit happens. So, as researchers, right? So, scenario is you September, October, November, you basically spend your time putting together diligent budget and strat planning. You've talked to all of your stakeholders. You know exactly what the following year's research agenda is going to look like. December, you get your budget approved. January, you are off to the races. And then maybe Q1 earnings come out and, it just throws everything, into the crapper. What do? You have to be able to make adjustments. You have to be able to, understand, again, what folks are up to, anticipate to the extent possible. In some cases, budget gets cut mid-year and you have to start, figuring out ways to be scrappier. That detailed research agenda, which had all kinds of elegant, research designs, may not be even a possibility anymore. So what do? As researchers, we certainly start with the work of art research design, right? Someone comes to us with objectives. We put together a study which is going to meet those objectives. Everybody's going to be, happy. It's going to have, every possible, bell, whistle, storytelling element. It's just going to be wonderful. That's where we begin. But then, all these factors that I've been talking about start to come into play, and we have to basically take that work of art and whittle it down to as close to as close to what is ideal as possible under the circumstances. And that is the sort of art and science of what we do. And it's, as a career researcher, this is the exciting part of it, right? It's not just about the nuts and bolts of project execution. It's all this other stuff that comes into play. So, macro shit happens. I won't really go into this too much other than, hey, guess what? The best example of macro is what happened to us, just over this past year. Who could have imagined what we've witnessed over this past year? This time last year, we were plugging along and then we weren't. It's remarkable what has happened. Now we're beginning to look back and things are beginning to get back to somewhat normal or whatever version of normal they're going to be. But here we are now in very much a learning mode. Our consumers, purchasers, stakeholders are these folks that we ultimately serve. What are they going to even look like on back end of this year, next year, and even beyond? That's the gig as researchers, right? You think you knew your audience that you targeted or that you would deal with, and then factors come in and they kind of throw things into craziness. So based on the we're all learning, right? So that brings me to our second half or second phase of this webinar, and that's going to be stimulus survey results. So Accelerant Research, we did a survey actually Tuesday and Wednesday of this week among 1,000 American consumers, very general pop survey, census rep on demographics, with the exception of household income. In order to qualify for the study, you had to be less than 150,000 in household income. Obviously, those are presumably the fairly loose parameters that would qualify one for stimulus, potentially based on what we know about who gets it and who doesn't, right? So we conducted this research using our panel, Agro USA. This is Accelerant's panel. This will be the extent of my sales pitch of the day. For all your qualitative and quantitative needs, feel free to reach out anytime. No, but we used Agora to conduct this research. And this was about, have you received the stimulus? What have you done with it? What do you plan to do with it? This is far from an exhaustive, deep dive into the consumer psyche and what, the American consumer is going to look like. But it's interesting, and there's some interesting thought starters that can hopefully help you along the way and maybe give you some insight into what's going on. All right, so first one we start with is, have you received your stimulus payment? And we have 2/3 of our respondents saying that they have. And that's fascinating, right? That this thing got approved. It's not even 2 weeks old yet, and you've already got 2/3 of folks already having received. So I know the intent was to inject a buttload of money into the economy, and I guess mission accomplished from that standpoint, at least. Let's see. So how was your stimulus payment received? Vast majority, again, this is as of I think Tuesday, Wednesday of this week, vast majority via direct deposit. Checks just beginning, and I think I've seen on the newswire that checks are like as of middle to late this week, really starting to hit people's accounts. So, that remaining third that hadn't received yet, presumably these are the folks that are more of the paper check. And this other that seems to be, a smattering of prepaid debit cards. You've got some folks that use like an H&R Block for tax preparation, and they have some sort of account set up through there, which it gets dumped into, which I guess technically would be like a direct deposit type, but interesting nonetheless. So, all right, so stimulus received. Among those who have received it, to what extent have they, or how much of this stimulus payment have they already spent? You've got 1 in 5 that have already spent the whole thing. It came in and it's gone out just as fast. You've got what, nearly half who have spent the entire thing. I'm sorry, spent at least 50%. So, again, if the intent from an economic, stimulus standpoint was to inject a whole lot of cash and get people moving, well, it seems to be doing that, right? So where is this money being spent? So what we did was ask folks to essentially, give us a rundown of the percent of their stimulus payment, which is going into lots of different things that they could be spending money on. So, in aggregate, what is the share of stimulus spending, right? So this is, how much they've either already spent or how much are they planning to spend, right? Where's it going? So this would be 40 cents out of every dollar going to bills, 25 cents to saving and investments, 10 cents to shopping, and 13% to other. What we're going to do is also now kind of go in and break down each of these, right? All right, so we've got other. What does that mean? So we've got travel and vacation, auto down payments, home down payments, charity or donation. So, travel and vacation, I actually expected that to be much larger. Maybe it's, a view of something that's about to start happening. We're at the front end of, people really starting to open up from a travel standpoint. But 4 cents on the dollar going to travel or vacation. Interesting. So shopping, right? Yep. So 10 cents on the dollar going to shopping. This I found fascinating. Still, that's a 60-40 split on online in favor of online shopping, 60% compared to in-store shopping. So, definitely not this, at least not yet, right? This revenge spending that we keep hearing retailers talking about and predicting. Maybe we're at the front end of that, but there's still a whole lot of online e-commerce happening. And again, to what extent is that online shopper here to stay, right? Saving and investing. So, you've got 3/4 of that stimulus that is just going out the door. So people are receiving, and it's directly into spending essentially. But you've also got 1/4 that's going to saving / investing, right? And the breakdown of that is, vast majority is just your typical, deposit savings account. A little bit to investment. Saw an article last week about, I think it was definitely an agenda-based article trying to kind of tout the, here we go again with, Bitcoin and crypto taking over the world. Yeah, it's there, but, it's certainly not the wave that some might be claiming or predicting. And then there's bills, and that is the vast majority of, the spending that's happened or happening is just going to paying for the stuff that we need to get by. And that breaks down to, credit card and loans, followed by mortgage and rent, utilities, and you know, 7 cents on every stimulus dollar going to past due bills, which, I mean, come on, you've got vacations that are getting 4 cents on the dollar, past due bills getting 7. That's pretty substantial. Okay, so, to what extent did consumers, report, the impact of this stimulus payment has on them? So either they, didn't know what they would do without it, either they needed it but could have gotten by without it, didn't need it but sure is nice to have, or this tiny sliver at the top, which is the don't need and don't want. Only 1% of our respondents chose the don't need, don't want. I guess that's not terribly surprising. And we took a look at this question by political affiliation, figuring there might be some interesting findings, a little bit of, I guess, variance, Democrats versus Republicans. But the one I found, most fascinating is the don't need it, don't want it. Everybody agrees. And I think, that's just, in spite of all the differences, and there have certainly been a lot of, polarization over the past several years, guess what? Wu-Tang was absolutely right. Cash rules everything around. Everybody wants money. That's just the way it is. All right, we also looked at and spoke to within this survey, business owners, contractors, gig workers, and asked the question of, if you've received your stimulus, have you used it at all for business purposes? And 1 in 5 saying yes. And that's substantial, right? And it speaks to, what we kind of have all seen and know to be true throughout the past year is, we're scraping, we're continuing to get by. Things are certainly looking better, but man, I mean, there's still issue, and the small business owner is certainly not immune to that, and certainly feeling the pinch, using some of that personal capital to help keep the business afloat, right? And I think that's it. All right, so 10 minutes left. Any questions that anyone has, definitely feel free to throw them into the Q&A or into the chat. Venus, if you've seen anything, definitely feel free to.
Yeah, I just have one question here from Gary. I don't know if you want to address it here or you want to contact him personally. It's like, how do you approach doing qualitative research on a new innovative product that no one has seen before?
Ooh, wow, yeah, that is a presentation in and of itself. I will give the answer that is the answer to every single research question in existence. It depends. Depends on the category, depends on the product. If it is something that is, brand spanking new, I mean, you always use there's that wonderful, Apple, is it the Apple analogy? I can't recall. Anyway, the iPod, when it was a brand new thing, had you presented, a product concept to someone very early stage in the innovation of it, if it's a brand new category, can consumers, can participants even wrap their brains around it? Or do you need to go in a different direction in terms of, how you're going to go about assessing and finding out about this thing? If it's brand spanking new, sometimes you do have to get a little more innovative when it comes to even your research approach, in order to get some decent intelligence, right? Any others, Venus?
No, that's all there is.
Okay, well, got about 8 minutes till the next presentation kicks off. So I'm gonna go dark for a few minutes, let you guys grab a beverage, hit the restroom, and we'll see you again at the top of the hour. Thanks, everybody.